Hey, good morning. Welcome everybody. It's Talking Niagara this morning with myself and Dave Wheeler. Hey, how you doing, Dave? What's going on?
Pretty good. Not much. Not much.
So, do you have Toastmasters yesterday?
I did, but I didn't go.
You didn't
That's
go?
one of those rare times I didn't go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you must have had something else on
No, I had trouble with my feet.
with your feet.
Yeah, every once in a while I have. I don't know what it is. My feet hurt like real bad, and I can't really figure out what it is sometimes. So, I was on my way out the door, but I couldn't walk very well. So the heck with it. I'm not going. I didn't want to sit there with my feet hurting. Because my feet hurt now. I got nothing on my feet, so my feet aren't they don't hurt so bad. But as soon as I put shoes on or something, they hurt like hell.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to sit in the room with my feet aching like crazy, trying to concentrate, and I didn't want to go into that room and then take off my shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I woke up this morning, my foot's hurting like mad.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Crazy foot syndrome, eh?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, I was fine last night, but I woke up this morning and crazy, aching like mad. But it is what it is, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gary Wheeler saying, "Look at you guys on time." Well, I try to be every morning. I just can't. I can't talk about Dave. You know.
I'm here all the time. Is that I don't know what you do with your electronics there, Peter, but I'm here at 10 to 7 waiting away every day.
Yeah, normally when I put the thing on at 10 to 7, by normally by about quarter to 7, I've given you the link. So if you're up at 10 to 7, why aren't you in it at 10 to 7?
Well, I'm lying because I'm trying to get on the Trump administration. Uh, the bigger liar I am, the better chance I get a job. How's
Okay.
that, Gary? Trump has been trying to make me great again by making me a better liar.
Well, there you go. Well, what can I say? Right? What can I say? You got to take
Yeah.
you got to take you've got to take the lead from the world's great leaders. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm serious. I'm serious. If you don't learn your lesson today, what good will you be tomorrow?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm learning from the best liars: Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin,
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
Yeah. Hey, Stalin's got great messages for everybody, right?
Oh my God. I that is the scariest regime. Unbelievable. The Hitlerian regime was really bad, but if you get into the Stalin regime, it is like these guys.
Yeah.
They're so scary. My God. Like, geez, it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And that's the way it was with these outfits. You're damned if you do, if you're damned if you don't. There's no middle ground. Like if you do everything you're supposed to do, you're still going to be a victim. If you don't do anything, you're going to be a victim. It just
Well,
there's no way of being anything else but a victim.
there you are.
I read about some of the purges, the Stalinist purges, how he purged his outfit, and it's true that he had people that would walk through fire for him, but he had them killed anyway because
Mm,
he couldn't be 100% sure that they were perfectly loyal. And you see
I'm
what's
sure.
happening to Xi Jinping right now, right? Xi Jinping right now is purging some of his most trusted military leaders, which gives you an idea. Like no matter they're his right hand man, the people he's been growing up with, and then he just takes them and throws them out. Now he's not
Yeah.
killing them. Some of them they do, but most of the time they just sideline them. But
Yeah.
nowadays, but but that's when you get an authoritarian leader like that, that's what they do. They have to be surrounded by people who tell them everything they want to hear, and that's, of course, that's a problem going forward, because the leaders now not making decisions based on the truth.
Yeah, but again, that one of the problems, you could argue that anybody who's been in power in political office for more than 2 terms, you could argue they start to get that way.
Well, even in democracies, like you had Trudeau hanging on to power.
Yeah,
at the very end there.
Prime example.
And it's very clear to everyone that his whole administration was lost. It was only the hangers-on around him that keep telling him that he was good to go. And I read what Kathleen Wynne had said about her when she was the Ontario Premier, and the people around her kept telling her how that she's good to go, to keep going. And she had that disastrous last election that brought in Doug Ford.
Yeah.
But she kept listening, and it was in retrospect, she looked back and said, "Why was I even running? Like, I had no chance." And yet all the people around her thought they were serving her well by keep telling her lies about how popular she was and all that. And that's in a democracy. So you imagine what it's like in an authoritarian regime.
And exactly. And the thing is, and you get these sycophants that tell you everything's okay when in fact you need to hear you've got problems.
Yeah, there's a big difference between sycophants and loyalists. A good loyalist will tell you the truth. They're loyal to you, but they'll tell you the truth. You're really messing up here. You're screwing up here.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to take. But if you surround yourself with people that tell you what you want to hear or what they want you to hear, then it's not serving you well. Yeah. And that's why dictatorships like Mussolini, Hitler, and Stalin are doomed to fall off, because eventually there is not enough creativity or new ideas.
But if you look at the fact of the matter, Dave, is that in the whole of human history, probably about more than 75% of all human history has been ruled by our lands have been ruled by dictators and sycophants and the like.
Well, you can see back in the days when the kings were around, but usually they were around by family members and that could get to them and say, let's say Kublai Khan or somebody like that. They'd be surrounded by family members, and said they could probably approach them and say, you know what, we're not doing the right thing here. We have to,
but also sometimes those people would just get, if you say you're doing the wrong thing, then you'd end up with a sword through your neck.
Well, even Alexander the Great had friends around him that could tell him what's up. Unfortunately, he killed a couple of them in a big drunken brawl one time. But even he, who was the greatest conqueror history has known, more successful. I mean, you have to wait until Genghis Khan comes along before you get another one like him.
Yeah,
and yet,
those are probably the 2 greatest conquerors in human history. But of course, they also only had empires that lasted a couple of generations.
Yeah, the Mongol Empire lasted 2 or 3. And anyway, we go into all that, but the fact of the matter is, if you have leaders that aren't going to listen to you, or only want to listen to what they want to hear, so like you won that election in 2020, you're going to get a job even if you have no proof.
Yeah. And the problem here is that that becomes problematic, and at every level, whether you're talking about local city politics or or president of the United States, the potential is that once you've been on the throne, so to speak, for more than 2 or 3 sessions, 2 or 3 terms, you can end up being, having problems.
You think, Paul Lemire likes to call Jim Daddy King Jim, but do you think that's a situation where he's surrounded by yes men? And in the council, obviously not, but they have certain reluctance to disagree with him.
Well,
some of the
councillors definitely have a reluctance.
He has 2 or 3, 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Several councillors have reluctance to say no to Mr. Diodati, right? And several councillors have in the past been Mr. Diodati's lead henchman.
Well, yeah, he had the old boys club, of course. That was a thing that was going on, and he can't deny that. As much as the guys want to think there wasn't an old boys club, but there was, But so 3 or 4, and then you've got the sort of counselors that sort of a little bit on the fence. You got it appears like Patel and Newestag want to join the boys club, but the girls, they've got their application in, and then you got Lori Lococo, who will speak to the truth most of the time as she sees it, and doesn't really care about King Jim opinions if she doesn't think they're correct. Anyway, so you could get that here too, but I think probably it's with our mayor in that there's enough opposition and in the region, in the area, that he really could not become a potentate. Whether or not his power could be eclipsed, whether somebody else could take over for him as mayor, that's probably unlikely, because he has the resources to do it, and there's nobody with enough talent to step up with the money and the talent to be able to unseat him.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, a chamber beneath the sands in Gibraltar changed what we thought we knew about Neanderthal people.
Oh, yeah, I didn't. I don't think
a couple of days ago we did that one. And hey, basically it's a 13-meter chamber. It was sealed off for roughly 40,000 years. It's preserving rare clues about the final chapters of Neanderthal life. And basically the Rock of Gibraltar was kind of an area whereby it would have been, beneath it wouldn't have been the ocean like it is today. Beneath it would have been rolling plains out into, out for a couple of miles at least out into the Mediterranean, where there was, where there was a different form of life than we would know it today.
Well, there was still the Ice Age, so the water levels were lower, and that's what I think you're getting at there.
Yeah,
the water, the world's water levels were locked up more and more in ice, so there's more and more land. As a matter of fact, Britain was attached to the continent back in those days.
Yes.
And that's how much, and of course we always hear about the land corridor, the land bridge between Asia and Alaska there, through the Aleutian Islands, when the water levels were much lower. Yes. So there were pockets, like, for instance, the Neanderthals may have been able to survive up to 20,000 years ago. Generally speaking, they were thought to have pretty much gone extinct around 40,000 years ago. But there seems to be pockets of them that survived here and there throughout Europe. What happened is that the Neanderthals were being displaced by Homo sapiens sapiens, our particular ancestors. But in the meantime, for a time there, they cohabitated and even bred with one another. So that is why Europeans and anyone outside of Africa, basically anyone outside of sub-Saharan Africa, has Neanderthal genes, Neanderthal and Denisovan genes, because those were the other two hominids that were prominent at the time when the Homo sapiens began to populate the Earth.
But Denisovans were primarily in Asia, whereas Neanderthal were primarily in European areas.
Yeah, Denisovans and Neanderthals are related groups, but distinct. And Homo sapiens sapien. So it's a long story, basically, how Homo sapiens broke out of Africa, but then turned around and went back, and then broke out again. Their first attempts at colonization did not work, but the second or third attempts did, and they pretty much took over the world. And there was a time there between 60 and 40 or 60 and 35,000 years ago where Neanderthals and Denisovans and Homo sapiens sort of lived together. But the Homo sapiens were much more adaptable to the changing weather conditions. So the Neanderthals had adapted very well to the very cold and rough elements, and they were able to take down huge game. But as the weather changed and things changed very quickly, the Homo sapiens were more adaptable, and Neanderthals just kind of withered out. Now, one of those holdout areas might have been Gibraltar, because there were other holdout areas in Spain where Neanderthals may have lived for a longer period of time.
It's also suggested that whilst they were more rugged as a human creature, they were also less adaptable to all the climates that we have across the world, which is why Homo sapiens won out.
That seems to be the issue. See, that you had a rapid change in weather and conditions, whereas the Neanderthals had adapted very well to the sort of very icy conditions, icy cold conditions of Europe at the time. They were, but there was a sudden climate change going on as the ice age receded.
Yeah,
and you had Homo sapiens coming in, and they were very adaptable to the new conditions and filled up those niches before the Neanderthals could adapt enough to fill them in.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a while there, you find caves and places where people live. In one layer, you have the Neanderthals, and just above that layer, then you have the early Cro-Magnon men, the Cro-Magnon Homo sapien types. And so it was a touch and go thing for a very long time. We still carry.
The interesting thing is about this cave is about 60,000 years ago, they were creating pitch tar.
Yeah, it seems to be like the creativity of the Neanderthals is still kind of a mystery. It's still really quite a mystery of how intelligent they actually were, how it, they were tool makers, obviously.
Yeah.
But other hominids had been tool makers prior to them. Of course, the most famous one being Homo habilis, which means tool maker. And that was really going back. It wasn't much later than Homo africanus, which was a really kind of a primitive hominid, just not barely much more than an ape, but they were still tool makers. And then we find that that's not really, when we look at chimps, that they use tools too. So you think, using tools and making tools is a different thing, though.
But it's different. I think whilst apes and chimps do both make tools, we started out on the line of making more, tools that were harder to make. I've seen chimps and that used like sticks to poke things to get food out of a hole. But not kind of adapt, craft stones to make axes.
Well, when you look at flint knapping when they're making spear points and stuff like that, that's a highly sophisticated
very sophisticated.
technique.
Yeah.
It takes years to figure out how to do it. It has to be passed on. So you think, well, there's this flint arrowhead or something.
Yeah.
It takes a highly developed sense of skill and
here's
intelligence
the challenge.
to be able to make that.
And here's the challenge. Probably people like you and I couldn't, are too highly adapted that we wouldn't be able to go and make flints, flint spears anymore.
No, I would just buy one.
Yeah. In fact, actually, that is exactly where modern society's developed, hasn't it?
I would just go to the cave next door to Grog. He makes really good ones, so I'll buy one of him.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So it's always interesting to see these sort of things, and the fact that this cave has been sealed for 40,000 years, and until recently, when they discovered it, a lot of this stuff has been closed off to researchers, but now they are UNESCO has actually made this a World Heritage Site.
I think the archaeopaleontologists that are permitted to go in there and do study must be over the moon. They have had a site that has been sealed off for 40,000 years. That was a Neanderthal site, probably not contaminated by any Homo sapien activity. And they have it, like they have lots of other caves where they've had Neanderthal, and then layered on top would be the Homo sapiens. So the Neanderthals lived in the cave for generations and generations, and then Homo sapiens did after that. So they have this mix. But to find a Neanderthal cave that is not contaminated with later habitation, like the archaeopaleontologists must be over the moon, super excited by something like this. This is I don't know, it would be a career making amount of research to come out of this. They could be doing research there for decades. And I think if I was an archaeologist or paleontologist, I'd be like super. Maybe as an anthropaleontologist, I'm not even sure the term. It was an archaeopaleontologist or an anthropaleontologist or whatever it would be. They must be, like I'm saying, like over the moon with the
interesting thing is I saw archaeologists and paleontologists on a documentary recently. They were digging ground in kind of they were digging the ground with trowels to get these bones out of the ground, and they were wearing CSI type suits, the white coveralls, because they don't want like human spit getting on the bones, because they wanted to DNA test them.
So I was kind of right. I wrote it up here. Paleoanthropologists and archaeologists and paleogeneticists. I didn't think about the paleogeneticists because they'll be able to extract some DNA probably.
Yeah.
But paleoanthropologists and archaeologists are the two sort of main groups in there. The paleoanthropologists, of course, will be studying how the people try to figure out how they lived and all that. And the archaeologists themselves would be the ones that be able to unearth the bones and unearth the different artifacts in situ.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited just listening about it.
What amazes me about this is they're now collecting DNA from these ancient bones.
Well, I don't know if they'll be able to get much out of here. The problem with DNA is it degenerates very fast. But they have been able to isolate enough Neanderthal DNA to be able to determine that, yes, we do have anywhere from 2 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA in anyone that comes from Europe. And that is because, and earlier than that, I remember the early genetic studies said, oh no, that's impossible. It probably didn't happen. It would be like kind of like a mule, like a donkey and a donkey and a horse. You get what you get is a creature that couldn't procreate itself, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems that that there was some overlap. You'd have to get 2 to 4% of our DNA from Neanderthals, and they were able to do that by extracting DNA from areas where the bones were not so affected, and better techniques of extracting that DNA.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Ontario high schoolers are now expected to get higher grades than ever before in order to get into university.
Well, what did you get out of that article? The one thing I got out of that article is, like, we've heard a lot about how many students have got into university and colleges that really did not qualify. We heard a lot in years past that universities and colleges were accepting everybody and their brother to get in there, and at least to pay the first year tuition. Yeah. So if you come out of high school and you just got pushed through, and you got the level of education of a grade 9, basically, but they push you through, and the universities know that, but they're quite willing to take your tuition for 1 year at least anyway, to full well knowing you're going to fail, but they're going to get at least 1 year's worth of money out of you before they say, oh, well, you can realize that you're not.
But there's some stories. There's some stories out there. It's like this one that I heard the other day, which is, you can use a fork, you can get into York.
Yes, well, that's changing now, isn't it? According to this article.
Yeah,
and that was the case. They were accepting anyone, and like, you, not just here domestically, but overseas. Like, we had so many students come into the country that were not capable of doing what was required to become a university or college graduate, didn't we?
I'm sure.
And that was one of the big problems. And then so we found out that we had a lot of students come into the country that didn't even go to school. They just got it. They used it to get into the country, and they maybe paid their first 2 years tuition or anything just so that they can say that they were a tuition student, but never really go to, and then just used it as a method to get into the country, and then sort of disappear into the ether. But my biggest issue here is we've been reducing our standards for so long that when the kids do now get into university, they cannot accomplish anything. They can't get through. And in this article, it says there are 2 ways for the students to be able to qualify for university now, because the universities have upped their standards. Now, obviously, sooner or later that had to happen. What didn't? Because when the university takes in X amount of people and 50% of them fail in the first semester,
again,
the other 50, and then 25% more fail before the end of the first year. What's the point of that?
Yeah, and again,
make money.
That's what you're basically saying there, Dave, is reflected in my when I did my law degree. There was standing room only in the hall on the first lecture, and by Christmas term, only half that number. By the end of Christmas, only half that number was still in school, and by the time we got through to the 4th year, when everybody passed, there was only the dedicated 50 or 60 people that did pass.
Well, my oldest boy started a course in computer science. There was 158 people.
Yeah. By
the time they finished it, there was only 12 left.
Yeah.
So you have 90% of the people fail or have to divert to something that's easier.
Yeah.
So the university education now Now, and we hear this over and over too, that once the university takes on students, the very first thing they have to do is teach them how to read, write, and grammar, and how to write an essay.
Yeah.
When I came out of high school, and I did a couple of years at Brock, I didn't need any of that. I knew how to read and write, and I knew how to write an essay because it'd been taught in high school.
Yep.
But because in this particular article, it says there's two ways for the teachers now to make sure that the student assure a student to get into university, and one is to really buckle down and really work with students, the ones that will make it, to get them into university, and the other is to fudge their marks, to put their marks on a bell graph or whatever, and bring them all up. So when a kid nowadays, he says, okay, well, I got a 85% after it went through the bell curve, and then goes to university and finds that they can't do the work.
Yeah.
They can't write the articles. They can't, they have to have tutors and stuff like that, teach them how to write an essay on that.
Yeah.
What's the point of that if they're not getting that in high school?
Yeah. And the question here is, if people are not given the skills to write an essay, and do well in that regard, how do they get through a university degree where essays are an important part of it? Now, the question is, I remember writing essays at school. We used to do it all the time, but hey, my grades were probably never more than a C+ or a B. Very rare that I got A's. You know what I mean? But I had essay writing skills.
Well, I just take my report card and change the grades on it, and then hand it over to my father. Straight A's again. Well done, Dave. What's the smudge here?
Doesn't help you though. Doesn't help you in the long run.
But that's what, it's telling us here that what is happening, I think, is the fallout of easy admissions earlier on.
Yeah.
Universities are built on their reputations. If you have a bunch of university graduates coming out of there and they go into the work field and they are not capable of doing the work, then you have to say to yourself, what university do you come out of? Well, I came out of York. And you'd say, well, you can't.
That's where those
work. You don't know the basics. How come you don't know the basics? And who gave you this diploma? Is you or whoever else? Yeah. And then the reputations come up. Look, when somebody comes to get a job and somebody says, okay, here's my resume. Oh, you went to York? See ya. We're not going to take anyone from York anymore because we know that they can't handle the work. Yeah. So reputation is a big thing.
Yeah, and it's problematic, and it's been problematic that I think it's about declining education standards, which is why, of course, the universities are turning this around and saying that we've got to have higher standards, especially in the day and age when students can go and use an AI to write their essays.
Here's the system. Here's the quote that I was looking for. There's increased pressure on teachers to get students to pass their classes, either by helping them learn more or by artificially inflating their grades to get them above the cutoff mark so they can achieve the credit. That's the problem I see there. Yeah, and teachers are disincentivized from telling their student, you failed this year, you have to repeat. Oh no, we can't have that. That's bad for the ego of the student. Yeah. Well, we just artificially put him through the course, him or her through the course, and now that person thinks they're adequate in math, and they go off to university or whatever and find themselves hamstrung because they can't do the work. Now, if we held them back a year so that they could do the work and learn it, they might be better equipped to move on. But of course, you can't do that. A lot of people I knew were held back grades in school, and they become very, very good later on because they needed that extra time to learn it. And once that was happened, they were great with it,
I didn't leave school at 18. I left at 19. I could have gone to university, but for my mother wasn't supportive of that. So I ended up going out to work.
And here it says here, all of the incentives in the system for teachers to do that. In other words, to artificially inflate their marks. On the other side of the grading spectrum, there's an incentive for schools to give out high grades so they can report to that their students are getting into prestigious programs. So there you go. So they inflate their marks. If they should get a 60, they call it an 80, and then they send them off to university and say, look, we got our people go into coming out of this high school, going to high-end courses in university, but then don't follow up and say that, well, most of them failed once they got there.
Yeah.
It says here, it's really an arms race that there's no way to climb down from. If some people are doing it, they are just hurting yourself and your students if you don't also do it.
Yeah.
So basically, what he's saying there is school A or teacher A is inflating the marks of his students, but you're not doing that to yours. So your students feel that they have been
let down.
Are being pulled down, and student B looks at student A over there, and he knows that he's as good or better than student A, but student A gets better marks because the teacher, kind of looks both ways. Okay, we're going to boost your mark up, so I look good, you look good, and off to university you go, and then you flunk when you get to university. The student B over here with a lower mark, and he can't get admission into university because his mark is lower than student A, where he should be the one that goes.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, that becomes a fake system, because you've got this pressure on the schools to actually get to achieve so many score marks, but then the universities, so when they get into university, they don't cut it. So that hasn't helped the system at all.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know why they can't hold a certain standard and make it universal across Ontario. And what started happening was, we can't hold back a person. We have to push them through. We found that this was a big problem in the United States. And we found that, and that it didn't work there, but somehow we adopted it over here. When in the United States, they had a lot of black kids that weren't performing well in school because they weren't getting good education and weren't going to good schools. But they said, okay, well, we're going to push them through anyway. So what happens is you get black kids going to university and playing basketball but can't hardly read or write.
Yeah.
And yet they're getting straight A's in university until the final year, where they flunk out completely because they don't need them to go on to play basketball anymore. They're not going to make it in the NBA. They were okay for university, and now they're set adrift, and they've got 3 years of university, and they can hardly read their bank book.
Yeah, and that is the problem with that is the problem with certain universities as well. That's a different matter entirely. But yeah.
Well, I'm saying they do the same thing in high school. They did for a long time in high school that okay, you can't burden them with this, and so we're going to push them through school. You get a diploma. Well, I know guys that gone down there to work, iron workers and other tradesmen have gone down to the States to work, and they get on a crew with a bunch of black guys. None of them could read. And yet they're supposed to have been able to read. They've gotten through high school.
Yeah. Right.
Or even if they got through elementary school, even if they got a grade 8 or a grade 9, they should be able to read, but they can't read.
Yeah.
So what's all that about?
Yeah.
We
Okay.
don't want that to happen here when we want that to be fixed down there. This idea that to sort of gloss it over and pretend, I think probably standards are good. Look, I went through elementary school. I was probably at the lower end of most of my classes. I was completely disinterested in school, but in the end, I got a very good education. I have a very good idea of when I came out of elementary school, grade 8, right? After grade 8, I knew a lot about the world, right?
Yeah.
I knew geography,
But
I knew
again,
basics of science, I knew basics of math, I knew basics of everything. I was fully equipped to go into high school.
and again, Dave, you could also write an essay.
Yes, I could write, and I could speak. We do a lot of different things, and I was pretty good at sports because I'd learned how to do sports, and we had even music and all kinds of a variety of an education that taught me a lot of things in spite of myself not caring if I learned them or not.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And whilst you, but again, whilst you might have got lower grades than many people who are passing today, you probably knew more.
Well, what happened was around about grade 5, grade 6, I started to get very interested in some aspects
Of
of my
course.
education.
Yeah.
Now I was able to learn how to do math and basic arithmetic. I just did, I mean, you kind of struggle with it, and you just do it, and you figure it out. You didn't get the highest grade, but you know what? You had a functioning understanding of math. So when I went out into the work field years later, to my surprise, nobody could hardly add or subtract or do basic algebra or angles or anything, and yet here I got it in elementary school.
Yeah.
And in high school, I didn't really pay much attention in high school either. But
Yeah.
I did learn about Russian history, domestic history. I learned about geography. There's certain things I would key in on that I found interesting.
Yeah. All right.
And anyway.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to kind of move on. Hamilton is voted to revitalize the Barton Village area.
Well, what's that all about?
Barton Village is that kind of area down by Barton Street, which has been kind of run down of late. It's around where the hospital is, goes to the east of where the hospital is, runs out along Barton Street, and the Barton Village there is kind of been a bit depressed of late, and so if you run through it, you kind of see larger numbers of stores that are being closed, etc., and they're just looking to redress that area, pretty it up, like it look better again.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Barton Street area. I was in there for a few months. I lived close to there. I lived in a hotel there for a couple of months around Barton Street there, and it was back then. It was kind of really a working person's place,
Yeah.
Workers lived there in comfortable but humble homes. Some of them kind of neat. But I don't know what they expect to get out of this now, what's happened to it, and what's going to happen. I didn't read the article, so you're going to have to tell us more about it and why it's important.
Well, they're talking about. So Alice Plug Boost, who's the executive director of Helping Hands Street Mission, says when people look in, they see dirty, dangerous things, and this has been what's been going on in the Barton Village area. It's become increasingly downtrodden, has a dangerous look and feel about it, and what they're looking for is to just improve the community overall.
What's dangerous about it?
Well, I've never found the Barton Street area dangerous, but I think anybody, when people say dangerous, I think when people see abandoned buildings, they think danger, as in you could get mugged in that area type danger. But I don't see it that way. I see opportunities, and I see the possibility that you can do something with it.
Well, I'll tell you this, that even when I lived there for a short period of time in the late 70s, there was a lot of thievery there. Like I had a station wagon that the company I was working for gave me, and the people I was looking after, Indonesian engineers, they bought a bunch of Christmas presents for their kids to take back to Indonesia. So so uh, the 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 station wagon was full of stuff, and I was parked right beside the restaurant. When I came out of the restaurant, out of the restaurant, everything was gone,
Yeah,
and it was like, right beside the restaurant, somebody came in and stole everything. So called the cops, and he showed me, look here. He showed me where they pushed the glass to put the Slim Jim in, all right, to open up the station wagon. He says, "Oh yeah." He says, "Oh, this was done by Slim Jim. You can see here." So he showed you where somebody pushed against the glass and ran the Slim Jim down the
yeah.
window and
So it's
lifted
been a
up.
high crime area for quite some time.
He said these guys got this stuff out of here in a matter of minutes. He had
Yeah,
no chance at all. I says, yeah, but it's right here under a street light beside the restaurant. I mean, it wasn't on the main street, but it was on the one beside it. And I thought, God. And then I looked around the houses there, and it could have been anyone from any one of those houses,
yeah.
and nobody was going to rat anyone out. And I
Hmm.
don't even think they came and got it out of a car. I think they just picked them all up and walked right over wherever their houses were, wherever they happened to be living.
Yeah,
So I think that
yeah.
kind of
But
thing
again,
continues on in and around those neighborhoods, but
yeah, and it's been a depressed neighborhood for quite some time. The entire time I've lived in Canada, I've been up and down Barton, been to and from Barton Village every once in a while, probably about once every year, 18 months I've been there. So yes, it needs it. It needs an upgrade.
so who's going to do it, and how do they think they're going to be successful?
That's a
So
very
this
good
article
question.
tells us what? How do they expect this to be successful? How
It
do they
does.
expect to
They
turn it
haven't
around?
even talked about that, right?
So what's the point of the article then? Like what is the lady who's speaking there? What's her point?
Yeah, they're basically the
'Cause I didn't
BIA.
read it. I have to.
Yeah, the BIA is pointing out that whilst they've got to improve the area, they need to keep rents and things like that affordable, but and not upmarket the rents. But again, it takes. I think it takes people upgrading the area to, you know, rent rises are inevitable, but you've just got to keep it. You know,
if you've got a lot of crime in the area, the best way to get rid of that crime is to buy up the homes and charge more for them, and then you bring in a
yeah.
class of people that don't need to steal, or people who make more money and they don't need to steal. That's not part of the culture. We find that that's happening in the United States, where what do they call it? There's a term for it. It starts with like generic, where they take
Um,
over a whole neighborhood. You know what I mean? It starts with a
yeah,
G.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're basically what you're doing is you're making a neighborhood more gentile. Gentrification is what you're talking about.
Gentrification. That's it.
Yeah,
Gentrification. Yeah. So what? Yeah. So the gentrification is like, if you're going to make a neighborhood, that's what you have to do. If you're going to keep uh, prices down, or limitations of rents, keep them low, then you're going to have to put up with more crime. Now, if you mixed it up, kept portions of the neighborhood in affordable areas and some that are a little bit more market value, you could decrease the amount of crime you have. But if you have a lot of people making a low amount of money in the same area, then you are going to get crime, and that's a sad fact.
Well, that's why I said the rents in this situation will go up. In order to improve the area, the rents will go up because that's an inevitability.
So yeah, so what do you do with the people the ordinary people there that aren't criminals that they need a lower rent? You know,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah. Okay, so the bridge at Chippewa, the Waitman Bridge in Chippewa under the main road, they're going to be putting a mural up there, and they want feedback from the community about what the mural should be. This is on the Chippewa side. So basically, if you go down from where Chris's yoga studio is under the bridge, it's a kind of nice little walkway there, and they want to put a mural up there.
Well, I would like to know who thinks what mural would look good. So maybe we could put it there to our listening audience right now. Who should be on the mural? Should it even be a person? Could it be a wildlife scene? Could it be a boating scene? Could it be?
Well, we got one suggestion already.
People in a canoe kind of thing. Go ahead.
We got one already. Mural of King Dave. You know.
Yes, indeed. I'm with you right there.
Shaking the hands of I'm going to say with the joint kings Dave and Jim, right? So shaking the hands between Dave Wheeler and Mr. Jim Diodati.
Well, Jim need not be there. I would like to be magnanimous. I would like to be magnanimous and include Jim on it, but let's face it, I'm way handsomer, and he probably just besmirched me. So basically, I would, I am the town's leading celebrity, obviously, being the bingo caller of note, and so the TV bingo caller of note. So me with my bingo shirt going like smiling. Oh yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, it's being decided. It's being decided.
Chris Simone points out that it's full of terrible graffiti right now. Yes, it is. And that, I presume, is the reason why the city wants to put a mural up there, because it's better to have a meaningful mural than horrible graffiti there.
Well, the graffiti artists, and I use that term loosely because I think we've got the absolute worst graffiti artists in the world in this place. I've been around the world. I've been in a lot of different places. I've seen graffiti in Thailand, in Portugal. I've seen graffiti in Cambodia. I've seen graffiti in Vietnam and China. I've seen graffiti in North Africa. I've seen graffiti everywhere. And we definitely have the world's worst graffiti artists. I don't know, man. They got to go back to school. Who gave those people paint can in the first place? Ought to be thrown into jail. I'm saying that any hardware store has to say, if somebody comes in to buy a can of paint, spray paint, they got to say, okay, are you a graffiti artist? Because here's a mural right here. Here's a big place where you can do a little graffiti art for me right now before I can let this can of paint go to you, because if you stink, I'm not allowed to give you this can of paint.
Okay, so we're going to have the mural painting act by Dave Wheeler that forbids people to paint murals unless they have qualified. Ugly mural.
I think all graffiti artists should be actually made a test. They have to have a test. Because let's face it, our graffiti artists in this town are like, they haven't even got into kindergarten compared to the graffiti artists I've seen everywhere else. Even in the States, you go across the States, they got better graffiti artists. What is that all about? How come we got the world's worst graffiti artists?
Yep, I don't know. That's a very good question.
I mean,
we talked about. let's cycle back to an earlier article today, Dave. So we're going to set up. We're at university now. You've got to have a graffiti art class.
That's what I was going to say too. Like we were just talking about the substandard education we have in our public schools and why our public school our students can't make it in a university because they're not properly prepared in elementary school. Well, I'll say our graffiti artists here are not properly prepared. We hang our head in shame.
Yeah, they got to go to school.
Right? They got to do a test. You know, we got to put up a big wall somewhere where they have to do a test, right? And if they stink, they got to go, right? They are banned from owning a can of paint.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on. BC Premier says extortion suspects are claiming refugee status, and this is ludicrous.
Yeah, I have a big problem with this article here. I had a big problem with the article on schools too, because it really didn't get into enough of how our standards have become so bad with our deteriorating elementary school education. It left out a lot of things, and this one too left out a lot of things. So they're talking about in a particular instance here where a couple of guys started an extortion scheme, and when they were caught doing that, they claimed refugee status, and the government took that refugee status seriously because that's what the law wants them to do. And so these two guys were extorting the neighborhood, and immediately when they got caught, they claimed refugee status. So that had to take precedent, and the refugee status had to be analyzed. And yet these people came from the world's largest democracy, which is India, which is not likely to be a place where there are going to be a whole lot of political violence against them. And yet they had to take it serious enough and use resources, Canadian resources. Finally, they were able to sort it out, and they're going to be able to kick these guys out. You should put them in prison first, then kick them out.
Yeah.
But this is a problem. And if they didn't say these guys were going to go back to India, you would have no idea that was the Indian community that was being victimized. Nowhere in this article does it talk about the Indian community in Surrey. It just talks about people in Surrey.
Yeah.
Right. So the extortion is being leveled by Indians against Indians, and you have to really look between the lines. I'm asking why the article, why, and there was an associated video that goes with it. They also interviewed a person from that community, and never once did they talk about it being an Indian versus an Indian kind of a thing. Yeah, and they should do. Because that tells us that immigrant populations are more vulnerable to extortion than established people are born here.
Well, and aside from anything else, just innocent stuff. For example, making an insurance claim, an immigrant might not necessarily know that rejecting the first offer that comes in might be the way that you get more money. Just on simple things like that. Immigrants don't know what Canadians know. So again, extortion, extortion comes into a situation where an immigrant doesn't know certain things, and other immigrants that do know better extort them, and they shouldn't.
Well, my problem with this is that yes, and this has been going on forever. Yeah. So we find that Italian communities were extorted by Italians. Yeah. So the mafia extorted Italians. Irish communities were extorted by other Irish people. Yeah. But particularly communities that don't speak a different language when they first came in, and English is not their first language. So extortion is much easily done here because people are ignorant of what the law can do for them, and if they resist the extortionist, then their business. Let's say you remember that little restaurant, that donut restaurant on Victoria Street there near Simcoe. It's very, very popular.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to go there and get the wontons and the food and everything else there. But and remember, a car drove into it and wiped out his business for a long time. Well, say that was an extortionist. Let's say that was somebody from the community. Say, look, you got to pay us protection money, and if you don't, something's going to happen. And you refuse to pay protection money, but then all of a sudden, an accident happens and a car runs into your building, right? How do you and I'm just making this up, of course, right?
I know.
I'm saying, because I remember that car going into that building, right? So how do you then say to anyone, well, that's part of the extortion, right? Oh no, it's just an accident. So what people do is they pay the extortion because they really don't have much of a choice. They no one's out there to protect them. And but the rub I have with this article, it never once said that those people that were extorted were Indians. And the only hint you got of it was when one of the politicians said, how is it that these people were able to claim refugee status when they came from India, which is the world's largest democracy and they have a rule of law there? How is India then a threat to anyone? You could see somebody coming from Venezuela, Colombia. You could see somebody coming from just about South Sudan, anywhere. You can understand the political pressures on them.
Yep.
But somebody coming from India, which is an ally of ours, that is a democracy, how is it that you're able to claim refugee status from a place like that? It's like somebody coming in from the United States and claiming refugee status. Mm-hmm. How much of it do you take it seriously? Yeah. So that's the point that they're trying to make here.
Yeah.
You have criminals coming in, extorting people, and then to avoid justice or deportation, they claim refugee status, which takes up a huge amount of resources.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, we have a right under our criminal code to deport criminals once they've served their time if they are foreign nationals.
The problem is it's very, very difficult because of the system that we have. We're trying to be fair to everybody.
Of course.
Unfortunately, that's being taken advantage of. Right. Yeah. And it takes up so many resources. So but this whole thing talking about extortion, they talked about it of all this extortion and what's happening and all that, but never once in the video or the article does it say that it was the Indian community that's being extorted. I think that part of it's very important because the Somali community and the Moroccan community and the Turkish community, whoever, Cambodian community, whatever, they could all be extorted, and there are protections against that. But if extortion becomes, in this particular case, seems to be very successful, and it targets a certain community, I think we should be aware of that. But for some reason, they don't do that. They just talked about extortion, and but who is being extorted? That's important.
Yeah, and as you point out, it's not a generalized thing where where people in general are being extorted. It's members of their own community that are committing the crimes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And when you've got immigrant populations, irrespective of where in the world they come from, there was always certain dangers because they don't know what the rules are in the local area, in the new local area.
Yeah, no, they don't. And of course, it's somebody that speaks their language and can threaten their family and know their culture.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We've heard about this continually.
And especially if that person has no knowledge of English or French.
Well, even if they do have a fair amount, but yeah, the least knowledge you have of the country you're in, the more vulnerable you're going to be if you want
Absolutely.
to start.
Yeah.
So let's say you start a business, you're gonna let's say you're an Indian guy, Indian person, and you start a business. You got relatives back in India that could send you the basmati rice and all the different things that Indian people eat here, and Westerners like to eat as well. And you start your business, somebody knocks on the door, says, "Well, this is really nice business. You don't want to see it blown up, do you?" And you got a kid there going to school, and it'd be pretty damn bad for anything to happen to that kid, eh? So guess what? You're going to have to grease this every month, and for that, we're going to protect you, and which means, in other words, we're not going to attack you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And it's as old as the hills. We've heard it with the mafia. We've heard it with other communities. It's not going to stop. And but it needs to stop. And unfortunately, you're right, because this article didn't address it in the same way. It was a bit fuddy-duddy, and insofar as this BC premier was enraged by it. Well, yeah, it's a problem. We need to deal with the problem, and extortionists need to be gone.
Well, his biggest objection was that the extortionists were able to sort of segue over to refugee status. Now,
Yeah.
let's say you have somebody from South Sudan come into the country and they are extorting other Sudanese people in Canada. Well, if they then got arrested and then went and said they were looking for refugee status, well, that's a politically hostile country. It's a very violent country. What are you going to do in that particular case? You've got a criminal that's extorting people and now demanding refugee status. And according to the way things are going now, that refugee status overtakes the criminal status, and that has to be dealt with first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you then pack them up and send them back to South Sudan? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's a very good question, because, as you say, the criminal who you deport to India is just going to get back to India and live a normal life, whereas the criminal you deport to South Sudan could well lose his life.
Well, the unfortunate thing is the extortionist, the Indian extortionist, should actually go to prison first, even though it costs the taxpayer a lot of money, and then be deported. Because if they're just deported, they'll turn around and find another way into the country and extort people in some other part of the country.
They have to go to prison.
Yeah,
they have to go to prison. Yeah, absolutely. And irrespective of where they potentially should go, they have to go to prison. But anyway, we're running over. We've got to finish.
Anyway, I'll mention again, Gaza. Yesterday, I think 21 people got killed. 2 of them children, a bunch of innocent people. The whole family got wiped out, apparently, or most of the family got wiped out. Most of them didn't even know why. The Israelis said that in and around that area, somebody shot or attacked an Israeli soldier. The soldier was wounded or hurt. So what the Israeli army did was unleash retaliation, but they didn't really care who they killed. They knew that whoever threw the stone or shot the bullet or whatever was somewhere in that area. So they killed everybody. That's the way they do it.
All right. And thank you. And Dave?
Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace. We might get some in Ukraine, it looks like.
Yeah.